I'm delighted to be introducing you to the Riley RM in this video. As you can see from the lines, it's kind of inspired by the Citroën Traction Avant, and it's more than just the low styling. This is one of the most innovative British cars of its time, so don't let the oldie worldy looks fool you. This really is something very special indeed. So the Riley RM was one of the first cars launched after the Second World War in August 1945, and in truth it is mostly a pre-war design, but one that was hastily redone because someone bombed the factory. Riley was based in Coventry, which was kind of like Motor City back then, and the Riley factory took a beating. All the drawings were lost for the pre-war cars and all the presses, all the machinery, the tools. If you're coming closer, just for laughs, this one's actually got a Jaguar Leaper on it, but that is just to wind people up at shows. Jaguar had no involvement with this car at all. It's just there for amusement. But yeah, under this very traditional body, which still has an ash frame and the steel panels fashioned around it, we have rack and pinion front steering and torsion bar independent front suspension, directly inspired by Citroën's Traction Avant. That car was launched in 1934, and it just did not drive like any other pre-war car. Lancia Aprilia we drove last year also had rack and pinion steering independent suspension, and yeah, again did not drive anything like how you'd expect. And I think this is going to be the same. I haven't driven one of these for about 12 years. It's going to be very interesting to find out. But let's take a closer look around the car. This is an RME, which was kind of the second generation of these style of cars. The earlier ones had hydro-mechanical brakes, which meant you got hydraulic front brakes, but the rear brakes, whilst operated by a hydraulic cylinder, there was a mechanical linkage, cables I suspect, or rods, to the rear wheels. This fully hydraulic, and we've got twin leading shoes at the front as well, so a good improvement. The roof is actually a perforated steel roof with this sort of leverette covering over the top, so it's not a complete steel body. And if we open these beautiful front doors, both the doors themselves and the frame of the car are made out of wood, so you need to be a carpenter as well as a bodywork guy if you're restoring one of these. Just absolutely lovely. And this car has a very special history itself. The previous owner owned this car for 60 years. Latterly it spent 20 of those years parked up in a wooden garage next to a dilapidated cottage. The owner had got on in years. He's still with us, by the way, now in his 90s, and had parked it up. And the current owner, Jeff, tried to buy it. It was quite an involved process. He had to do a telephone interview, and then when he went to view the car, he was interviewed again to see what his intentions were for the car. And the buyer was a little reluctant to sell it to him because he was like, "You're too old." But the problem is, younger folk are not into these cars, and I guess in this video we're hoping to spread that love and try and get younger generations interested. There is a lot here to like. Now, as soon as we're at the rear, we might as well have a nose in the boot, where we find this marvellous tin for a start. So good for keeping your tools in. The spare wheel lives under here. You can pull this handle up. This entire panel then lifts up. But the paintwork is so beautiful, I daren't do that. But a decent size. We've got my backpack in there as well, of course. And most of the bodywork that was needed was in this area. Water had been dripping onto the roof and had got into the parcel shelf. So that's where Jeff had to do most of his work. But he resprayed the car himself in his garage just behind us, where lurks another Riley RM. And I think he did an amazing job. The paintwork looks absolutely stunning. But I guess really we should have a look inside, because that's where things get really special. Before we do, let's have a look at the engine bay. Again, the engine bay is accessed in a very usual manner for this time, but I just want to pay attention to this. How do you stop the bonnet shutting? You move this tiny bit of metal there, and then the bonnet cannot shut. Genius. But this really is the heart of what makes this car special. Riley had an amazing reputation for engineering, and this little 4-cylinder engine 1.5 litres, is part of why this company was held in such high regard. I mean, it's a similar level of engineering to Citroën and Lancia, but perhaps even more so. This engine is actually a 1930s design fundamentally, but it has two high camshafts. They're not overhead, it's got regular overhead valves, but the camshafts sit right below the block, which means the push rods to the valves are very, very short. It means the engine is actually quite revvy and beautifully smooth as well. When we fire this thing up, you will barely be able to hear it. There's a tiny little carburettor just down here, dinky little thing. So there are things you can do to hop these cars up, but generally in magazine testing form, they were finding these cars were doing 0 to 60 in about 30 seconds and onto a top speed of about 75. But the owner reckons this one has been breathed on a little and is actually quite perky. Behind that, we've got a 4-speed gearbox, no synchro mesh on first gear, but again, the gearboxes were also done by Riley. And then there's a torque tube axle to the rear, or there was on the early RMAs. I think the later RMEs changed to a more conventional rear axle, and that was kindly driven by the fact that Riley actually went bankrupt in 1938. The various brothers, Percy Riley was the engineer, he was the powerhouse. He built Riley's first car in 1898 at the age of 18, and kind of encouraged the company to move away from bikes and towards cars. But the family did not always get along. So it became part of Nuffield. Riley then became part of the British Motor Corporation with Austin, Morris, Wolseley, all those other companies, MG. And sadly, the name was allowed to just fade away, the last Riley being a Kestrel based on the ADO 16. But let's go and have a nose inside. So climbing aboard made more interesting by the old suicide doors. So there's a bit of a technique to it as you fold yourself in. Oh, what a noise. And look at this beautiful wood. And apparently the door itself is beautifully engineered. Jeff has had to have this all apart to check the winding mechanism. Look at that. So that all works absolutely perfectly. Little seal, felt seals done all around here. Look at the sun visors. They're just pulled down from the headliner itself. It's just absolutely gorgeous. I have absolutely no idea what this does. I should have asked Jeff, but I've no idea. But yeah, here we are behind the wheel. Look at this slender, beautiful steering wheel with the spoke design. This operates the trafficators. We don't have indicators, so that makes the indicator pop out on that side when we got the ignition on. Got an umbrella handbrake down here. I think that would be your screen wash. A little ashtray. The ashtray itself seems to be missing, but not so necessary in this day and age. And just look at this beautiful, gorgeous gold dials, beautiful wood. We've got water temperature, oil pressure, fuel, amps, and then the speedometer, which optimistically goes all the way up to 90. A full bank of switches doing various things. Under here we've got the original heater, so just open the door to let the heat out. That's magnificent. 4-speed gearbox down here, and yeah, then you just go and try and work out what all these various things do. It should be interesting to find out. Let's pop the ignition on, which makes that light go off bizarrely, and pull up this, and we get the wipers. The washer's not currently connected, but a very of its time wiping performance. I don't even know what you begin to call that. There's a chasm of disappointment maybe, but it seems wrong to be harsh on such an old car. They didn't have the best wipers back in the day. But yeah, it's just absolutely glorious in a really low position. Riley was one of the first manufacturers to drop the chassis down around a transmission tunnel. So we haven't got much of a tunnel here, but a lot of manufacturers still weren't really cottoning onto this. So you sat up above the highest part of the chassis, whereas this kind of, it sinks down around its mechanicals. But I think I should probably go and have a nose in the back. It looks very, very comforting back there. But I will just say, if you look at the back, you can see where some of the trim has had to be replaced. The headliner itself is still the original headliner, and I think given how old this car is and the fact it spent 20 years sitting in a somewhat damp garage, that's remarkable. Moving into the rear, step across the massive sill, and then, like I say, sitting here in the back, let me bring the camera over. We've got this huge transmission tunnel, and the footwell is sunk down into the chassis, and that lets you bring the whole car that much lower. It's why the car looks so rakish. Obviously the Citroën Traction Avant didn't have a propeller shaft, and the monocoque construction meant that car was very low from the factory. But oh my days, this is beautiful. Look at the original light. It doesn't seem to function. It's obviously got a bit hot at times. That's wonderful. Again, we've got winding windows in the back, and they go all the way down. Feels a little dark because we've got no windows here. Quite a small rear window. The RME window much larger than the RMA, but we've got the pull down armrest, and the smell in here is just absolutely wonderful. The wind mildly raging, but yeah, all very nice. And I don't think Jeff has had to do too much to the seats. I think they've been re-dyed. Some repair work was carried out on this seat, just where it had worn on the edge. But yeah, it's just amazing. Really, really high standard in here. So ignition on, find S for starter, make sure we're in neutral. And that's running. It is so quiet. We can see it's building up the oil pressure. We'll let that get as high as it's going to get on idle, and that's about there. It's a nice responsive engine, so this should be very lovely. No synchro mesh on first gear, so in we go, and gently does it, and we're away. And I feel like I should be wearing my Trilby hat. So out on the road, the steering, as you'd expect, very, very accurate and pleasant. Snickety gear lever. This is actually the first time I've driven one of these with a Riley gearbox. Realised the last one I drove had an Opel 5-speed in it, but we're not going to be going too hard on this one. It has covered a mere 100 miles since the restoration was complete, but it gets on the road really nicely. You think of cars like, you know, I always go on about the Austins. You're having to, they're finding their own way, they're fighting you a bit down the road. None of that with this. It just steers straight and true. The brakes need a good shove, they're very of their time. But I think the overriding thing I notice is just how peaceful it is, really. It's very quiet and refined. We reached the dizzy heights of 40 miles an hour. These will cruise at 50, 55 all day, but given the maniacs on the roads around here, I'm not really that keen to push it. Now, diving back into the history of this car, when Jeff managed to pass his interview to collect the car, they went up to collect it on a really rainy day, had real issues dragging it out of the shed, and Malcolm was not impressed, calling them a bunch of cowboys as they struggled in the rain to get this car moving. And then they got it stuck on the driveway and couldn't get it out. And Jeff was forced to go hunting for a 4x4 owner to lend a hand. But when he got back, the car was out on the road. And it turns out a load of cyclists had come past, seen that there was an issue, and they helped push the car onto the road. So Jeff was finally able to get it back, and very early on he went through the fuel system, carburetor was gunked up, fuel pump was gunked up, cleaned those out, put some fresh fuel in and tried it, and it ran after 20 years in a barn. So mechanically I don't think Jeff has had to do very much to this car, but I must say it does go very nicely. If you wanted to go faster, you needed an RMB or an RMF. They had a longer nose and a 2.5 litre version of this engine, 2443cc I think it was, and they were sort of knocking on the door of 100 miles an hour in a way this isn't interested in. That said, Malcolm did apparently relay a story that early on, back in the 60s, when he was courting, he and his girlfriend went to Blackpool and she had a drive of the RM on the way back, and he was horrified to see the speedometer wound round to over 80 miles an hour. I was scared she was going to blow up his engine, but thankfully it seems no lasting harm was done. Malcolm was an absolute stickler for recording the history of this car, so Jeff has got so much. There are typewriter written notes about the mileage, about the oil that was put into the car, what work was carried out. So he did an awful lot. I don't think we'll pull out in front of that. We'll let that go. So the history of this car is very, very well documented. It had a few changes of owner prior to 1963, when it lived in the Midlands and sort of moved its way to Shropshire. But like I say, a continuous 60-year ownership. So bends really aren't something to be feared in this car. The engineering was primarily done by Percy Riley, although he passed away in 1941 and had kind of been sidelined by the time these cars were in development. But many of his innovations live on. But yeah, this is very much a sporting saloon back in the day. It doesn't really compute with what they're like to drive today. Over this beautiful bridge. Over Avon Tivy. Avon Tivy, sorry, you were quite right. Corrected by my co-driver. Avon is an anglicisation of Avon, which is the Welsh. So the River Avon is technically the River.
Prisoner of war camp.
Yeah, prisoner of war camp here.
With their own church.
Yeah. I think there's a linked history between that car and this, because it was developed during the Second World War. It's a beautifully smooth engine. Just a hark back to a simpler time. Oh. Such a lovely noise. But yeah, this is definitely one of the easiest cars of its era to drive, I think. I think there's some cars of the wartime era that if a modern car driver jumped in, they would find it a real struggle. But this kind of behaves in quite a modern way. Oh, the induction roar. Oh, beautiful. And just the fact you can pitch it into bends and it just responds magnificently. Now we've been driving a little bit longer, I will say the clutch is quite heavy and you have to make sure it is all the way down. We're doing a lot of back and forth, and of course the manual steering needs a bit of a heave as well, but oh my days, it's a lovely thing. And some cars get a bit hot and flustered when you're doing the back and forth shots. Not this, it's still running absolutely beautifully. Now Jeff has written a couple of articles for the Riley RM Club that have been in the newsletter about this car, about the finding of it, the rebuilding, which is some good reading. Yeah, there is a little Nova. Oh, it looks very sad. And I must give good thanks to the Riley RM Club and the Riley Archives. I think it was rileyarchives.org. I was doing lots of reading up. Frankly, too much information has gone in my head. There is too much in there to tell you about, like the fact it was Riley that developed detachable wheels. We take them for granted. They didn't exist. But Riley thought maybe this is a good idea. Riley was right on that one for sure. And there's a lot of talk about that first Riley car. Sadly, it's been lost to time. but I don't think it necessarily had it in 1898, but it was an early adopter of mechanical inlet valves. A lot of early cars and early engines, even that De Dion Bouton I drove last year, that was in 1903 I think, that still had an inlet valve that was sucked open by the piston going down. A mechanical valve was more complicated, but gave better performance, and that was an early adoption of Riley on that first car. It was kept by the company for years. They did a lot of development with it, so like I say, a very pioneering company indeed. It's just a shame that towards the end Rileys were just badge engineered Austins and Morrises. They deserved better than that, but like so many of these pioneering companies, the difficulty was always in actually making money. All clear. You can wait, BMW. It's 20 limit, that was not 20. Regardless, you don't feel in quite such a hurry in a car like this. Yeah, it's a lovely, really rorty engine, but the overall feel is just of massive engineering competence. The last true Riley was the Pathfinder, but the Pathfinder was a more modern looking car, but still on this chassis. And there were a few technical issues. They tried using a very clever brake servo system that didn't really work. It harmed the company's reputation for excellent engineering. Ooh, that induction roar is quite intoxicating. Oh. Can do a bit of heel and toe, but it's quite cozy in that footwell. Yes, what a beautiful day for a drive. This is a very entertaining drive. It's obviously not fast in the traditional sense, or well, the more modern sense, I guess. But it goes well. It's got a good spread of torque as well, and that induction noise, very endearing. Well, there we go. That was an absolutely beautiful drive. Absolutely stunning. You can feel the Citroën inspiration right the way through the steering wheel. It just handles so very well, and it's such a shame that Riley sort of fell by the wayside. It deserved better, but a beautiful example. Huge thanks to Jeff for letting us drive this car, and for telling us the story of Malcolm, who owned this car for 60 years. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. And I'm really keen to try and get younger people into these cars and discover what the magic is for themselves. Thanks also to the Riley RM Club and the Riley Archives. I'll try and put those links in the description below. And thank you very much for watching. Just before you go, don't forget, a great way to support us is with channel memberships. Have a look for the link below, or visit our Fourth Wall store. But yeah, we shall see you in another video. Farewell.